Let's talk. So as far as I know, you have participated in many models of UN. Maybe do you think that it inspired you to work in the future for the UN?
Which I participated in, and this most definitely influenced my desire to work for the United Nations, because actually I was very interested in math and science, but after Model United Nations my whole career changed and I became involved in international politics, and then even went on to write my master's thesis about the United Nations and preventive diplomacy.
When did you come to Kazakhstan? How many years have you been here?
In this current position I came to Kazakhstan 2 years ago, actually 2.5 years ago already, it is now, but I had the pleasure of also coming to Kazakhstan before. I've worked with Central Asia before in previous positions in my career, and so 15 years ago I was engaging with Kazakhstan quite intensively, and also even came to Kazakhstan during the Soviet period as a tourist. So the first time I came to Kazakhstan was actually in 1990.
So what is your general mission in a nutshell in our country in Central Asia?
Yeah. Well, UN Women is the newest of the UN agencies. That was actually, we're the only agency that's been created in the 21st century. And this agency, UN Women, was created due to the importance that the global community now places on gender equality and women's empowerment. So actually our office has been here for quite some time, because there used to be a fund called UNIFEM, which worked on the similar issues. So we're kind of an outgrowth of UNIFEM. But the mission and the mandate, what we have here, is to help the governments of Central Asia to live up to their international commitments that they have under international agreements, such as CEDAW and the Universal Periodic Review, and also the Beijing commitments for the advancement of women, and now for the Sustainable Development Goals, the implementation. So that's a big overall function that we have, and also we work with the governments to promote women's economic empowerment, to end violence against women, also in the areas of women, peace and security, and national planning and budgeting.
Are you involved in the kind of normative structure of the government? For example, by this I mean, can you maybe have to do some recommendations in terms of how to change the legal basis, how to improve the legal basis, so women have, on the legal basis, have more equality and more rights?
Yeah, no, most definitely this is the work that we do. This is one of the 6, as we call it, impact areas that UN Women works on. So the way that we do this is we very often do assessments of current legislation, the weaknesses in them, the areas that they need for improvement. So for example, in Kazakhstan, we're doing this particularly regarding domestic violence, and working with the General Prosecutor's Office, working with the National Commission on Women, Family and Demographic Policy. We provide suggestions. I mean, we have experts working on analysis of the legislation and also the practice, the implementation. It's not just what's on paper, because sometimes, very often, the laws are quite good, but the problems come with the implementation of the laws.
The power of the state.
Yes.
Yeah. Gender equality or gender inequality, these terms are, how to say, super extensive, and it's hard to even make a very precise definition of that. How would you describe the gender equality, and what do you mean by gender equality?
Well, gender equality means, and we talk about globally, not just Kazakhstan, I mean the general principle of gender equality is that men and women and boys and girls have equal opportunity. And by that, that means it's not that men and women are equal, they're obviously biologically different, we know that, but it means that they have equal opportunity. So when it comes to employment, so that if a woman decides she wants to do hard physical labor or to be an engineer or a miner, I don't know, some of these professions that are currently, let's say, forbidden, that she has that right to decide herself that that's what she wants to do. So that equal educational opportunities are there. What's also important is that when, in the domestic field, so at home, that the additional burden of responsibility for the family isn't only on the woman.
For example, in Kazakhstan, we still have gender inequality problems. And what do you think, what are the most salient problems that now we have to pay attention, and we have to regulate somehow?
Yeah, basically most countries around the world still have gender equality issues. So if we speak about Kazakhstan in particular, One area, one big gap is women in decision making, particularly in the political sector. In the parliament, the situation isn't so bad in the sense that in the lower house and the Majlis, you have 27.1% females. In the Senate, it's not as good. Yeah, you have only 8.4%. Now, of course, Senates are, it's not directly elected, it's appointed, but still, it needs the higher echelons of power to appoint more women, to have a more balanced participation.
Like in terms of the gender equality, and I think you also deal with the women's right, and also you have crisis centers, 34 around. So how many people usually come to this crisis centers? And, like how many people know about these crisis centers and are trustful enough to come and say...
Yeah, UN Women, I mean, we don't have any crisis centers ourselves because that's not our role and our function. There are in Kazakhstan around 34 crisis centers that are mainly operated by non-governmental organizations. Some of them receive support from the government, some from donors. They're throughout the country. And our job is basically to help to support them if they need support about how to function, what to do, relations with the government. According to the official statistics, roughly 40,000 women applied to the Ministry of Interior last year, which is basically, the police and the law enforcement bodies. As far as the crisis centers and the shelters, I think the number is about 9,000 women that in 1 year, last year. What we've done from our side is, for example, last year under the 16 Days Against Violence, we produced a brochure which had a list of a number of the crisis centers, and a map, and then their contact details. We can share one of those brochures with you.